DC Multiverse!
So how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be having a look, compliments of the folks at McFarlane Toys, at the Flash movie versions of Sasha Calle's Supergirl, Ezra Miller's The Flash, and Michael Keaton's Batman. These figures are part of a larger series which also includes Ben Affleck's Batman, a different version of Ezra Miller, and also the Black Flash, all of which will be in the next video, including the Bat Cycle. Oh, and while we're on the topic of vehicles, why don't we also unbox and review Michael Keaton's '89 style Batmobile that is also part of this action figure line from McFarlane Toys. Starting with the figures, you can see that they've got your basic McFarlane Toys packaging. Nothing any different just because it's a movie. It's all going to be the same black, white, and blue. On the back of each of their boxes, we see some fantastic artwork, all three of which these pictures could very easily be made into full-size wall prints because they look really slick. And out of their packaging, all three in front of us, this is everything that we got on the inside. All three of these figures clearly come with a trading card, but they also have a few more accessories to go with each character. Supergirl has 2 sets of interchangeable hands, a punching fist set, and a relaxed finger set. Ezra Miller's Barry Allen comes with 4 of those clip-on pieces of lightning, and Michael Keaton's Batman comes with 2 sets of interchangeable hands, 2 for fighting, and 2 for grasping onto his Batarang and his Bat Grapple launcher. Fantastic. So now let's have a look at each of them individually, starting with the Flash, which I will tell you now is the figure of the 3 that I'm reviewing today that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I do. I like the fact that the texture on this suit here really gives us a good idea on what to expect up on the big screen. All of these yellow lines here, very reminiscent of the New 52 era, which is where this whole thing started, and even in Rebirth, the Flash's suit was very much like this. Not really sure what all this stuff is going on there on his back. That's kind of weird. And I definitely do kind of sort of wish that his waist lightning bolts actually came a little closer and met, say, here, rather than meeting there. One thing I can say clearly and without hesitation is I really don't like the Flash's boot area, his footwear. I really wish that people would stop wussing out. Just give him his gold boots. It's part of the overall aesthetic. I mean, you judge for yourselves. Which one looks better? Just the straight up classic gold boots, or like this mess? Although I do have to question whether I like the boots or not, is what are those on the back there? I'm assuming that has something to do with helping him stop when he's running, but these are weird. His chest symbol looks as, I suppose, tidy as you're gonna get it to look on a figure like this. I like the fact that we just have a basic Flash symbol here, even though the movie one is perhaps a little bit more complicated. The face sculpt for this Flash figure is actually pretty good, and I do like the fact that they haven't gone with the lenses down look, because then you'd have that like orangish yellow lenses over the eyes look. The paint for the eyes is actually pretty good, and the overall likeness to Ezra Miller really isn't that bad. Much like with the boots, though, I do have a complaint, and that is I really wish that they would stop wussing out on Flash's details. They didn't give him his earwings. He never had them in Justice League, and now he still doesn't have them. This is as close as I think we're going to get to Ezra Miller actually having the proper earwings on the side of his head. One thing that is very interesting about this figure is, what is that? What is that circle there? And look, he also has another one right there. What are those? I have no idea what these are supposed to be. I'm sure that we will find out in the movie. For the Flash, you can see here, I've only taken one comparison shot. It was the only one that I thought was kind of necessary, and it has the original Flash Ezra Miller costume from the Justice League, and then also the original Flash figure from McFarlane Toys. And I just overall think that this is a really cool looking Flash figure. I love the red, I love the gold, and it is also actually really posable. Rob, Ahsoka, and myself had Josh from Before Figs on our previous live stream, and we were all fiddling around with this Flash figure, and he's actually really, really posable. This is This is a great figure. I really, really like. There's nothing about his posability that makes me wish it was any different. Like, I am satisfied with it 100%. Like, everything, how far up the legs can go, how far back they can go. Even the fact that this Flash gets that movement that I always complain that we don't see a lot of in McFarlane's figures. He has, like, articulation that, as far as I'm concerned, is, you know, it's on point. No complaints whatsoever for this Flash's articulation. But now we need to move on to Michael Keaton's Batman. And I must say, a finer Keaton Batman figure in this price range hath we not ever seen. The sculpt on this guy is fantastic. They really did Keaton justice with this figure. The body looks awesome. And proportionately, I think that they nailed it. I think this is just really, really well done. Keaton's facial sculpt for this figure, the profile is actually really good as well. Sometimes the paint applications that are given to these figures doesn't really bring it out, but I think that this actually looks good. Look at the bottom half of his face, and yeah, it's not quite as wrinkly as Keaton actually is in real life. I think it looks very, very reasonable. And the cowl is a little bit strange in that the top of the ears here, well, you can see, like, they're a little thick. He is suffering just a little bit from the same thing that the Kenner version of Keaton's Batman was suffering from. In the same way that his ears were just ridiculously huge. In that the same way that this Batman figure's ears didn't come up to anything that one would consider a point, so too, this Batman's ears are kind of knobby at the end too. Now, if you're daring enough, you actually can very carefully Dremel them down so that, you know, they look more like Batman's ears. He's got a nice Batman Returns bat symbol on his chest, which, if I'm being honest, I really actually liked a lot better than the '89 style bat emblem that he had, so I'm glad that they went with this style for this figure. If you watched the live stream a couple days ago when we pulled these figures out, I kind of a little bit made fun of the fabric for this cape, saying that it reminds me of a pair of underwear that I had when I was a child, the fabric itself, but I also pointed out, if you'll remember, if you were there, I said that this is also probably the best fabric that's ever been used on a Batman figure, that at least that I can remember to date. It's nice and thick and soft and really movable. Like, this is a really nice fabric. It's just weird that the inside of the fabric has these weird, like, dots. It's weird. It looks like underwear. And there is actually quite a bit of it too. With cloth goods capes, I know that toy manufacturers often have a bit of a hassle trying to figure out how to tackle them, because if you make the half circle cape, which is really what the cape would be, then you end up with a ton of cape left over. And if you just make the cape so it comes down the back, well, then that just looks stupid. It looks like a strip. That never looks good. So yeah, I feel like this is a reasonable, happy medium for a low-cost, mass-produced, you know, to the consumer product. All of the body armor for this guy, for one, it does have definitely a Batman Returns feel to it, but it also is really its own thing, and it's glossy in some places and matte in others. The abs and the belt, they're very unique. I really, really like these. This is fantastic. I would have obviously preferred like a gold belt, because I feel like that really ties in. You have the face, you have the yellow, and then you have the yellow or gold belt, and I feel like that is what really ties the Batman's look together, but it still looks great. We have different gauntlets on this Batman than we've ever seen before, and footwear, though still reminiscent to the first two movies that Keaton was in. It's also been redesigned. It's not the same. I wonder if these are Nikes underneath the tops of these boots. What do you think? So, of course, for comparisons here, we have all the movie iterations of Batman that McFarlane Toys has put out over the years. Christian Bale, Robert Pattinson, and on the other side, Ben Affleck. Also, I've compared him here to the NECA version of the Keaton Batman from the 1989 film, and then finally also the Mattel Multiverse Penguin figure. I think that this Penguin actually scales really, really well with this 7-inch line. And as for how much of a poser this guy is, he's actually not too bad either. I feel like the Flash definitely has more articulation, but inside the torso here you have that rounded joint, and that does give way quite a bit. Of course, there's going to be a 360 rounded hinge. We're going to have the sockets in the elbows. We have the shoulder pauldrons that, regrettably, I must admit, definitely get in the way. That shoulder armor. You can't really expect much there until you move the arms up like that. So no T-pose, not really. 360 right here though, swivel for the bicep, double crunched up elbows, wrists on the hinge. He is a very, very articulated figure otherwise. Of course, down here, he's got the McFarlane groin, pretty much nothing like this. And I'm like, well, you were on a roll with the Flash, that's awesome. What happened? Doesn't Batman get to have, you know, more posability and articulation? But that's just what we got. We have double jointed crunchy knees that are certainly as much as I would ever ask for. And you've also got a rounded, molded hinge for an ankle that fits in with the boot that also has the toe articulation. Once you pivot it, you got the toe. A pivoty toe. And now onto Sasha Calle, or Cal, or Kales. I should have known how to pronounce this before I did the video. Hold on. Hey Google, how do I pronounce Sasha Calle?
Sasha Calle.
Calle.
Sasha Calle.
Calle. And I was pronouncing it Sasha Calle. I've heard some people call her Sasha Calle. Sasha Calle. Wow. Okay. I'll do better. So Sasha Calle's Supergirl suit isn't one that we've really ever seen before. If I had to pinpoint it, I would say it's really based off of a few panels in the Injustice 2 storyline, and it was actually Superman's daughter that never was. Not a bad face sculpt though. I'm sure that some of the paint applications could be better. That's true, and the hair probably should be darker, and her head looks a little bit round and pudgy, but I do see what they're going for here, and I think that it does a good enough job to pass as Sasha Calle. There are those out there that think that Sasha's S is just another one of Superman's, and it's not quite. It's definitely different. The bottom swoosh is huge, and the top one is different. It's completely differently proportioned. You got the lines on her suit here that are evocative of a pair of male's tighty-whities, and these typically would be, like these lines would be lighter, and the same with the ones going down her leg. This has been sculpted on, which is cool, but that's just been painted. There's no sculpted line work on the legs. It's just the texture, and the texture looked good, but that would have been kind of nice to have just that bit of color difference. Her cape is a really kind of hardish, almost inconveniently hard rubber at times. Would have been nice if it was just slightly softer. And it's really thick at the bottom, which is going to make her really top heavy and probably harder to stand up. But as always, at this point, the question becomes one of articulation. What kind of articulation does Sasha Calle's Supergirl figure have? It has a ball-jointed torso that is super articulated, as well as the waist. Putting those together gives an insane amount of torso articulation. That is very, very good. Very human-like. And even down, facing down, that's pretty awesome. Even though the granny panties definitely seem to get in the way a little bit, it's not too much, because if I just peel her little granny panties down here, you can actually see that her torso really ends where the granny panties begin. So it doesn't really hinder the articulation. That's a fantastic amount of articulation for the torso. Now, because she's a flight character, not only do you want the torso to be well articulated, but you also want to have a reasonable amount of articulation in the head. And so if we straighten her body out and pull her head back, well, that's not a huge ton to write home about, but I've certainly seen worse. To me, that's passable as flight articulation. And of course, the ball joint allows her head to go all over the place like she's at a rave party. Then we have the shoulders. You have these sockets here. And it was brought up on our live stream with Rob and Ahsoka that, yes, the arms go in quite a bit because they make room for them right here in the torso with these sockets. However, they don't really do much else, and they don't move to their full extent. If I pull that up nice and close, right, you're actually seeing that there's all this space for the articulation, but it's not 100% utilized. And though the socket really doesn't do much like that, it still is a pretty good amount of articulation with the rounded hinge. She can do, well, that. Almost a full T, but not quite. Of course, there's going to be 360 bicep swivel right here that separates from the red as you spin it, but that's okay. That's the kind of thing you know is going to happen. Double jointed elbows, and those are really nice. And of course, we have down here the McFarlane groin. And what do we get for the spinny spin motion? Not a lot. This is the one I always want to see improvements on. I want it to be much more easily spinnable. We see double jointed knees crunching up as much or more so than they would need to, or is possibly even humanly possible. We have the rounded hinge, we have the pivot, and we have the toe, just like always. Oh, I forgot, and the wrist. I always almost forget the wrist. Rounded hinge, and it's really articulated. So that is what we've got for Supergirl. If I can get the character into a pose like this, then someone like me is happy. So yeah, no complaints at all about her articulation. And now we should turn our gaze towards the Flash's rendition of the '89 Keaton Batmobile. In the same way that clearly Michael Keaton donning the Batsuit has built up at least 50% of the hype for this Flash movie, I feel like this Batmobile is arguably one of the most popular items in the entire McFarlane Toys Flash wave of figures. And that makes sense, because this is a Batmobile that you could very comfortably fit your 6 and 7-inch scale action figures into, which is something that we've never been given before in the form of a Michael Keaton style Batmobile. Now there's going to be people out there that say, well, the Batmobile is different. It doesn't look like Keaton's Batmobile. Well, and that's probably because it's not exactly the same. I bet you when we see what they actually bring out on screen, whether or not, you know, the bats are gold, which, hey, they might actually be a gold color. This might actually be accurate to the movie. They might actually be gold color bat wheel hubs here. But this will definitely be a slightly different Batmobile. I feel like it's going to be 99.5% exactly the same, with very slight differences. But it is a very fantastic Batmobile indeed. It's got rubber tires that spin freely, and I can't stress how nice it is that these are not just your typical hollow action figure Batmobile tires. And the bottom of the Batmobile looks cool too. There's a big bat symbol on the bottom. I don't know if Batman's had that, but it is cool that this is something that they decided to add on here. And yes, you'll have to pardon all my fingerprints. This thing is so shiny, it just shows every single time you've touched it. Looking at it from behind, it's got the 4 red tail lights. It's got the exhaust coming out of the back there. You got that big old turbine. Would have been kind of cool if these were some kind of like red sort of shiny-ish plastic, but they were painted and it looks good enough. On the side, we have some of those inner workings that we can see, some of the pipes and other bits and pieces, along with the huge air intake cooling system. At least, I think that's what it is. From the front, this Batmobile has all of the proper details as well. You've got the yellow headlights, you got that turbine right in the front there. This Batmobile also has the machine gun turrets. Those of you wondering if they open, they do not. They're just molded as part of the Batmobile. And they got the vents in the front under the canopy. All of these details in the front are, oh, hi. These details are incredibly accurate to what we had growing up. And I love these fins on the back. I love how they're nice and thick, like they're shaped just like they're supposed to be. I really like how they just did a really good job creating this Batmobile. The only thing, and I'm sure that you've seen it by now, and we've probably all talked about it as far as outside vehicle aesthetics, is the gray canopy. I would ask just a simple, why? Why is the canopy gray? Batmobile never had a gray canopy. And it doesn't in the movie. So why is it gray? Was there like a mess up at the factory and they were like, ah, go with it? It's okay though. A lot of people, myself included likely, have ended up repainting the Batmobile. Or at the very least, the canopy. Now one last thing to mention here is that when you push this button right here, the canopy will pop open and you can see that we have a single seat cockpit on the inside here. All of the gadgets and the knobs and dials and stuff like that. Do I wish that it was a double-seater rather than a single? Of course I do. However, this Batmobile would have to be much, much larger for it to be a two-person seater. But the obvious question, even as a one-seater, is will Batman fit in this Batmobile? Well, okay, not like that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just being a dope. I know that it won't fit unless you put him in the Batmobile properly. You gotta stuff him and all of his cape and everything right in there, and you gotta get his head below this. We are not looking to shed his ears in the canopy. Can we slide him forward a little bit more? Can we get Batman's ears? Well, I've got it down as far as I can get it. Let's just, here we go. All right, so it goes down, flattens, sits nicely like that. Now the question is, do his ears come out straight? Let's find out. Hit the button, pop the canopy, and I've clearly done something wrong. Hold on, let me try again. If I really push, I can get him in there, but I gotta stuff his ears behind this right here. If I stuff his ears behind that, then I can close, and that seems to be the optimal closing position. Now, of course, I'm going to bring in a few other 7-inch scale Batmobiles just to compare this one to, and the only ones that seemed like they made any sense to me were the animated Batmobile that DC Collectibles did way back in the day. This is a fantastic Batmobile, and the Patmobile, the Mattel 1/10 scale remote control Batmobile. And as you can see, these are all big, big boys. So there you have it. That is my video review of Batman, The Flash, and Supergirl, and the Batmobile from the upcoming The Flash movie starring Ezra Miller, Sasha Calle, and Michael Keaton, reprising his role as the Batman. Anyway, that's all for today. Have yourself a super awesome DC day, and take care, everybody. Bye for now.